Hello everyone, I know it's a bit dark here, but the sun has been blazing through, so we've got the curtains closed and whatnot. And I didn't really want to put the lights on because that seemed a bit wasteful in terms of electricity. So this is Phoenix with the astrology report for the 17th to 23rd of June. I hope that you've had a lovely week. Any revelations from the eclipse? Anything you want to say? Just add in the comments. I had a wonderful weekend, and we had gorgeous sunshine here in Bristol, and I managed to get to see the sea for the first time this year. What a difference going to the sea makes. Absolutely brilliant. Feel wonderful from that. Even though the workmen returned, they came back on Friday. They also were doing work on Monday morning, but ups and downs, swings and roundabouts, that's what life is. So that's over, and we've got a good week ahead of us. We've got the Summer Solstice coming up on Monday, which is the second date that I've chosen in this report. So let's get down to running through what's going on this week. Bringing back the themes for the week, 17th to the 23rd of June 2021. The summer solstice happens in the northern hemisphere, hooray, on the 21st of June, and obviously that will be the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. The sun moves into Cancer, also on the 21st. Jupiter goes retrograde on the 20th of June, which is more illusion reality checks. Mercury retrograde ends on the 22nd of June. The review is almost complete, but we're not quite there yet because of the post-retrograde shadow. So we've got that to look forward to, but we are effectively, the post-shadow is where it's getting back to where it started before it moved on its path towards being retrograde. So once it reaches that point and it's going direct again, and it's going, oh yeah, it's like it never happened really, let's keep going forward. The shadow healing aspects are pretty much the same. The ego is still asking for help alongside your Chiron wound. This is why I'm probably not going to mention these each week, because there's not much real change. Materialism and relationships, codependency, they're all open with Lilith still in Taurus for a couple more weeks. Obviously that will change when Lilith is in Gemini. That's going to be much more mental. Mental as in the mind, not necessarily in the sense of being chaotic, but not necessarily not that either. And Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto are checking our boundaries, relationships with authority, our deep understandings and our comprehensions of our stories. This is reality illusion check. And Jupiter's another one of those big players like Saturn and Pluto that's there to confront us. What do we believe? What should we believe? Those are the big questions. So the rundown for the astrology of today, which is this is taken at 11:11. Sun in Gemini 26 degrees, the moon in Virgo at 17. Mercury in Gemini retrograde 17 degrees. Venus in Cancer at 18. Mars in Leo at 3. Jupiter in Pisces at 2 degrees. Saturn retrograde in Aquarius at 13. Uranus in Taurus also 13. Neptune in Pisces at 23 degrees. Pluto in Capricorn at 26 retrograde. Lilith in Taurus at 25 degrees. And Chiron in Aries at 12. With the main aspects, Sun trine Jupiter, Sun square Neptune, Moon square Mercury and trine Uranus, Neptune sextiles Pluto, Mercury trines Saturn and squares Neptune, Venus trines Neptune, Venus square Chiron and Saturn square Uranus. So that's quite a lot. And that's what the chart looks like. And we will go into that into more detail. Okay, so starting with today, the 17th of June 2021, the chart is for 11/11. We have the Sun in the final degrees of Gemini now. So we're nearly into that cusp region of the 2 to 3 days each side of each sign. As an aside, if you are a person on a cusp of a sign, you may find that you identify more with at least some of the traits or influences of the next sign, and that's completely normal. So really the cusps will be from more or less tomorrow up until about the 23rd, 24th of June. And it's always a good thing to read up on if you have read something about a specific sign. You think, well, that doesn't sound like me at all. If you're a cusp, it might be because you're much more influenced by that cusp energy, and you can specifically find information about cusps with a quick Google. It can be very effective. At 11:11 this morning, we have the Mercury both and At 11:11 this morning, we have the Moon and Mercury both at 17 degrees in Virgo and Gemini respectively. Venus moving forward in Cancer, and Mars is now making its way forward into Leo. This is a combination of activity. Virgo is a very hard working down to earth sign, which is where the Moon is today. Gemini and Cancer and Leo are all very good at getting things done in their own way, so this should be positive getting things done, but we'll get into the aspects. It's when we get to the middle point where the kind of conscious working becomes a little more external, and we have Jupiter is about to go retrograde, just a few days away, where it will go all the way from 2 degrees of Pisces back into Aquarius. We have Saturn that is retrograde already in Aquarius, which is leading to a big decision. There's going to be a conclusion. I'll go into that at the end when I talk about Jupiter retrograde in Pisces and Aquarius. The outer planets, even further out, the more generational and communal influences, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, are all in the same positions, but they are bouncing and reflecting interactions with the other planets. So the Sun is trining Jupiter but squaring Neptune. The Moon trines Uranus as it transits between that T-square from last week, as it forms a T-square again from a different position. Same degree though. And it's with last week's missing element, so the Moon will have moved to the 13 degree point by Monday lunchtime, which is just after the solstice. Mercury and Venus, Venus's activity could be interpreted as it was more likely running interference, but perhaps allowing awakening moments. Mercury trine Saturn is this combination of Mercury retrograde being assisted by Saturn retrograde. And is that really help? Mercury in Gemini is trying to keep busy. It's still into a lot of things, and Saturn here is playing devil's advocate, kind of poking you in the arm and then saying, no, there's nothing to see here. And Mercury also squares Neptune. Neptune's in Pisces. Neptune in Pisces is a very spiritual alignment, especially as it's in that third decan. It's in that kind of ultimate position of the zodiac. So whilst these mental gymnastics are placed by Mercury, Venus is the heart, and the heart is being pulled apart from a positive alignment with Neptune but squaring Chiron. The aligning with Neptune is encouraging a connection to the divine, to the higher self, to a higher power, but Venus's heartstrings can get carried away, and they can get deceived by Neptune and its apparent godliness, and this is where you can end up with false worship and putting things on pedestals that don't belong there. And the squaring of Chiron whilst in Cancer, and Chiron being in Aries and Venus is in Cancer, can be an abusive relationship. It can be wounds, old ones, or creating new ones. So you just need to be aware that our Venuses may be all over the place at this time. And as other people have this, and they have different wounds, they may be reflecting their own damage back to you, or you back to them. If you can notice this, end it. If you can talk about it and work through it, do it then and there. Don't leave things to fester, because these wounds can hurt deep. And as always with astrology, it's always useful to look up and refer to your natal chart as when things are transiting into your native houses and placements. Obviously some things won't do this in our lifetime, some of those outer planets, because whereas some planets reach these positions within a year or 2 or 3, it takes too long to reach that return position, but just look for the ones that do. Every time you find that placement returns, it can affect you stronger than someone without that placement, for better or for worse. An example would be the Saturn return, which is normally around 29 years from birth. At the age of 29, the Saturn return, and it'll be like, oh, and a secondary at 58. These are approximate. You need to look into your own chart to get when it returns. And this week is all centered around changing off the solar position with the solstice and the change from Gemini into Cancer. This finality of Mercury retrograde on Tuesday and the beginnings of Jupiter retrograde on Sunday the 20th. The moon will continue its journey from Virgo into Libra, into Scorpio, which will be interesting, and then Capricorn. So to summarise for today and for tomorrow, we do have this positive going forward energy that these signs are pushing forward, but we do have elements that are going to hit us, and certainly the end of Mercury retrograde is going to be welcome, but there still could be a few missteps along the way, and the interactions with Venus and its placements could mean there could be some tension in the air for those that are feeling emotional, and we just need to look after ourselves, be aware that these things can happen, and maybe we can work through it, or if we can, ignore the people that are trying to upset us. So now it's time to zip through the chart of the 21st of June. The Sun 0 degrees in Cancer, the Moon 9 degrees in Scorpio, Mercury 16 degrees retrograde in Gemini, Venus in Cancer is 22 degrees, Mars in Leo 5, Jupiter retrograde in Pisces at 2 degrees, Saturn retrograde in Aquarius 13 degrees, Uranus 13 degrees in Taurus, Neptune 23 degrees in Pisces, and Pluto in Capricorn retrograde 26, Lilith in Taurus is 25, and Chiron in Aries 12 degrees. The Sun trines Jupiter, Sun squares Neptune, the Moon is in opposition to Uranus and squares Saturn, which makes that fixed T-square again, only it's a different makeup to last week, which I will go into. Saturn squares Uranus, Mercury trines Saturn, Mercury square Neptune, Venus trines Neptune, and Venus is opposite Pluto at 176 degrees. Jupiter has gone retrograde, Mercury about to go direct, although in the pre-shadow phase, so it's just going back to where it needs to get to move forward. And Neptune is in its pre-shadow phase. And now we move on to the 21st of June 2021, Monday, which is the summer solstice in the north, the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. The chart is focused on 4:32 a.m, which is, I believe, the time of the solstice. So it will be late the 20th on the east coast of the United States. With this solstice, there were 4 planets retrograde, with one more entering that pre-shadow phase, and one Mercury going to enter that post-shadow phase on the 22nd, so it's right at the critical point of Mercury retrograde. And that's Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter and Pluto, all retrograde. They're all in the kind of review cycle for this solstice. We're getting to relive those astrological placements so that we can review them, move on. It's a useful tool for us to be able to get back to where we need to be, through our own, shadow healing work. And with the solstice itself, it marks, it's a great marker for where we are. We're at the midpoint of summer, and as astrotheologists suggests, they're out at the point where we are at the top of the sine wave. We're at the top of the wheel, and the sign in Cancer marks the meeting of the Tropic of Cancer. And so, in 6 months' time, the sine wave or wheel will have the sun moving in, will be moving into Capricorn, so the bottom of the sine wave or wheel will be meeting at the Tropic of Capricorn. Energetically, the solstice marks a high point. It's a high energy point. In fact, these next 2 months should be bright, not necessarily meaning that we are, weather-wise, we're having a heat wave. That's not what this is about. But we have 2 strong, positive, energetic months of Cancer and Leo, where the sun is kind of at its fullest, before that final last hurrah of the summer that happens in the time of Virgo. So this is 3 months in total that are our highest point in our journey around the sun, before the sun falls at the equinox in Libra. And over this time, our vibrancy, our outgoingness, our project works, community should all improve. But as you know, and there's always a but, our communications can get a little heady, especially in those first 2 months. Because as we charge forward into our summer energy, we can get a little moody and manipulative through these signs as our ego grows and we gain confidence. We also improve and we get things done. And this is the best time of year for it to be done for a lot of us. But the ego can become a problem where we're ignoring advice that's coming to us, whether it be individuals, whether it be through spirit. So we just need to be aware that sometimes our ego can get us carried away. And also, Cancer and Leo are hugely protective signs, and that influence on us is that we're very protective of close friends and family, and that can sometimes be a distraction to the ego when the perceived threat is not actually real. So this solstice has a moment to be in, although probably not at 4:32 a.m. if you're like me and that time is for sleeping. But with 4 retrograde planets, the T-squares back with the missing link from Scorpio to Leo, is to ask yourself, what do I need to see? Or what am I not seeing now? What is useful? What will help me going forward? We've had the lunar eclipse. That's why this year is so cool in a lot of ways, even though obviously from COVID point it's disaster. continued disaster, especially with the bungling of lifting of restrictions due to somebody's ego. You know, we had this lunar eclipse, then we have the solar eclipse, and then we have the solstice. It's like having these three events in close proximity is giving us real chance for growth and to kind of jump ahead. So if you were feeling behind, there's 3 chances to really pop forward with our spiritual growth, with our development. And of course, if you're going to ask the questions, be receptive, listen for the answers. I got very short, sharp responses of the messages that I got for the solar eclipse, but once I've sat with it, it makes perfect sense and I didn't need anything extra. So just listen, be receptive. And looking at this time, we have the second point of the T-square. So looking back to last week, we again have this fixed T-square. Only now, as the Sun and Uranus are still at 13 degrees, the Moon has moved around to form the T-square in Scorpio, leaving Leo, that fixed fire, as the missing link this time. The T-square at the time of solstice is 9 degrees, but that changes as the day goes on because the Moon moves through a degree roughly every couple of hours. So it will be at the 13 degrees and form that perfect 13-13-13 T-square at around noon to 1 p.m. on Monday the 21st. And as a recap, in case you missed it from last week, the 13-13-13 code is one that seems ominous at first. It challenges even death in the spiritual sense, but 13 unlucky for some, but also being a code for transmutation. And 13-13-13 is an omen of powerful transmutation. Now the fixed T-square is in that 13-13-13 alignment. So we have 90 degrees between Saturn and Uranus, 180 degrees between the Moon and Uranus, that full opposition, and Saturn 90 degrees to the Moon. So there's tension abound. And this time, moving on from last week, the dynamic shifts with the Moon opposite Uranus instead of Saturn, and that's the stronger aspect here, that opposition as opposed to the squaring. This T-square has 3 fixed elements: air, earth and water. So instead of missing the deep waters of emotional Scorpio, this time it's missing that fire. The lion has left the building. So the point that we might be missing is actually the drive of Leo, and this is where the ego of Leo is actually a missing link. So it could be seen as helpful, but it might be the bit that holds back. And what the Moon brings into this equation is intensity and deep and sometimes dark emotions. Scorpio is not afraid of getting itself dirty and really getting to the crux of the issue. But in Scorpio, the Moon can seem secretive and yet transformative because of the depths that they will go. The Scorpion will take its time. It lashes out if and when it needs to. Tangling up with Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus and Taurus, we have dilemma. We have a scorpion or a snake, a rebel rouser, and a very spiritual fish, meeting off in a very odd looking spiritual bar fight. Scorpio takes no prisoners, but can be prone to grudges and spite. They indeed hold venom, but Saturn and Uranus squaring is already a big thing for the year. And no wonder that rebellion is in the air and there's gaslighting and framing abound. Deliberate deception is out there as much as truth. So the kind of way to look at this is that this T-square that exists just on Monday the 21st is challenging your thoughts and perceptions, and with the help of the moon is actually taking you darker and deeper than perhaps you'll be comfortable in going. Know that this doesn't last for long, we're only talking about a matter of hours. But in relation to the solstice, this is big because your receptiveness is already going to be tested. So with Leo missing, remember to stand your ground, to remember who you are, and as much as we are connecting in with the cosmos, with the cosmic, with the universe, with everybody else, we are here as individuals, and we do need to stand our ground, and we need to be balanced in order to perceive what is real and what is not. It could come out as a big reality check on Monday, but it is going to be different for everybody because these are just influences. Alright, we finish with Jupiter retrograde in Pisces, which begins on Saturday the 20th. Jupiter is at 2 degrees, and so as we're only a couple of degrees into Pisces, it just shows how kind of slow moving Jupiter can be, because it starts retrograde on the 20th of June and it's only going to reach the critical degree moving back, because it's going backwards. It's moving, well, not literally, but in this star signs it's moving backwards. It's going to hit Aquarius on July the 28th, so we've got over a month with just 3 degrees. And then when it's in Aquarius, then that's going to be something different to talk about, because things are going to change then. But we've had these 3 degrees of Jupiter in Pisces, and the retrograde is getting us to think again, to check our reality and our comprehension of the world around us, and our comprehension of the inner world, what we are, because Jupiter is such an expansive planet. It's got such big energy, and placed in Pisces, it's so powerful that it can transmute our spiritual growth so hugely. And what's been going on lately is there have been discoveries, and we've been creating pictures in just these few degrees of Pisces, and some things need double checking, almost like the fact checker, because the downside of Jupiter in Pisces is because it's so progressive, it's so big, expansion, it's transcending all things, it's the final sign of the zodiac, and in a home placement it just hits hard and everything feels more real. But it isn't necessarily real. This is a time where we can go deep into conspiracy theories, and if you perhaps have, this may come up for double checking. Am I on the right path? Is this resonating? Is this real? I can't go into real depth here on what that could be, because what I feel is correct now may feel more like an illusion over the next month. I certainly know where I'm heading, but that course may change. So it could be something that knocks everything out of place for a bit, because it's also working in conjunction with the other retrogrades, these other reviews that are going on. Now Mercury ends after 2 days, but then spends 2 weeks in its post shadow. So it's still, although it's big and expansive, it may not really impact until a couple of weeks into July, when we're moving closer towards 0 degrees in Pisces. Well, say moving backwards to 0 degrees Pisces. So take your time. I would make a lot of notes so you can revisit things at this time. If you're keeping a journal, keep a journal of thoughts, not just from meditation, but thoughts and of dreams, because the messages can come in many different ways. I've had a couple of visitations in dreams that have corrected thought processes in the last couple of weeks with Jupiter in Pisces, but I may have those corrections corrected, I don't know. So just be open to what can come through, that we're going through this further reality check. And then when we return to being back in Aquarius at the end of July, there's going to be a different challenge that we face with Jupiter's retrograde. Don't worry, we're all going to get through this. Like all the other retrogrades, sometimes I try not to be over dramatic, but it feels like, oh, this is a big change, this is a big sign, this is a big aspect, and it can be. And some people go through these things and they feel no difference whatsoever, and if that is the case with you, great, that's fine. And if you are hit hard with it, remember it's okay to talk it out or journal it out, whatever feels right for you. Jupiter retrograde in Pisces, it's going to be an interesting time. It'll also be interesting to see what's in the news, although as I've previously said, I wouldn't spend too much time on social media nowadays. There are clear narratives that people are trying to hit out, and they're not always good ones. So that's Phoenix signing off for the week's astrology report. I have to say that next week, as I'm on holiday, there probably won't be a video, but I will write something up for the week. I don't think I'm really going to get time to put a video together, so it's likely just a bit of text with a couple of pictures of the charts for the week. Might even only be the day. We'll see, but have a great week, and I will post something up next week. Stay safe, stay sane. This is Phoenix saying goodbye. Cheerio.